Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Lieutenant Commander Jocelyn Blowfield. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching this ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Thank you. You may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Alan Barney Percy. Alan Percy was born on the 29th of November 1919 in the Sydney suburb of Gladesville, the son of William and Eva Percy. He grew up in Sydney and went on to work as a storeman. On the 22nd of April 1941, the 21-year-old enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force. He joined the 8th Division in May and would eventually work as part of headquarters staff. Private Percy was sick in June and then spent some time at a convalescent depot, but returned to duty in July. Toward the end of the month, he embarked from Sydney, bound for overseas service. The intention had been to deploy the 8th Division to the Middle East to join the other Australian forces. But as war with Japan loomed, the division was divided into 4 separate forces, which were deployed in different parts of the Asia-Pacific region. Private Percy arrived in Singapore in August and then continued on to Johor. He suffered from a laceration to his leg in late November 1941, but returned to duty soon afterwards. As war broke out in the Pacific, Japanese forces quickly overran Thailand and invaded Malaya. In mid-January, parts of the division went into action south of Kuala Lumpur at Gemas and Muar. The 2nd 30th Battalion carried out a large ambush at Jemenche River Bridge, which destroyed a Japanese battalion. The 2nd 29th and the 2nd 19th Battalions reinforced the 45th Indian Infantry Brigade near the Nuar River. The 22nd Brigade fought a series of delaying actions while withdrawing to Singapore. The attack on Singapore began at 10:30 p.m. on the 8th of February, when 2 Japanese divisions crossed the Johor Strait to the island. By the 13th of February, the battle for Singapore was all but over, and on the 15th of February, British forces surrendered. Most of the Australians captured were moved to Changi, where they occupied Selarang Barracks. For many, this was just a transit stop, as working parties were soon dispatched to work camps. Percy was allocated to F Force, one of the last Labor forces to leave in mid-April of 1943. The force consisted of 3,662 Australians and 3,400 British. F Force's hardships began when they were sent to Thailand by train, packed into suffocating metal railway trucks with little food or water. When they reached Ban Pong in Thailand, the prisoners were marched over 300 kilometres to half a dozen camps towards the Burma border. To avoid the heat, which was at its most intense in April, the prisoners marched at night for as much as 12 to 15 hours. When the monsoonal rains began in May, paths became impossibly slippery and treacherous. Many of the men collapsed and had to drop out. The bulk of F Force arrived, utterly exhausted, in mid-May at remote and primitive camps. There, acute supply problems aggravated widespread outbreaks of cholera, dysentery, malaria, beriberi, and diarrhoea. Many of the men were unwell even before they had set out. Isolated in upcountry Thailand, remote from food and medical supplies, and drenched by monsoonal rains, a third of the Australians and almost 2/3 of the British prisoners died. Alan Percy is recorded as having died of dysentery on the 20th of December 1943. The graves of those who died were later transferred from camp burial grounds and isolated sites into cemeteries in Thailand and Burma. Today, Percy's body lies at Kanchanaburi War Cemetery in Thailand under the words, "Greater love hath no man." He was 23 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Alan Barney Percy, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrubber Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We'd like to thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.